Welcome to the Copy Talk podcast. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member, FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Lighthouse Financial, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Shannon Ross is CEO and managing partner of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse and Cambridge are not affiliated. And now, here's your host, Shannon Ross.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very exciting show because we have a new guest because our normal co-host could not be here today. So we called in some backup, and we got good backup today. And welcome, Father Stanley Hayes.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
Stan the man, he's been on other shows with us before, but now you're here in Colorado. Normally you're in New Jersey. You haven't been out for like 8 months.
It wasn't because I didn't try.
Third time
was
a charm. So we had tried over the summer, but then a hurricane got involved. And then COVID got involved, and then this time you arrived last night in perfect timing.
I'm so excited. It's amazing how fast the kids grow. Like I can see different inches of growth in just a short period of time.
Well, I totally sprung it on him. I picked him up last night from the airport. I'm like, guess what you get to do tomorrow? Because he's a very faithful fan and listener.
I am.
So I asked him to come and join us today.
Yeah, fresh off the boat, as they say. I'm still adjing to the altitude.
And he was a little nervous.
Else.
He was a little nervous that I would embarrass him.
I have no time to prepare. Not that helps, but.
But I love that you're listening to the show.
You guys do such a good job.
Oh,
I mean,
thanks.
it is funny. It's helpful. It's very thoughtful. And I'm so proud of you, Shannon. I mean, you just knock it. And your co-host, she should have her own comedy hour. I mean, amazing April.
I know. We do miss her today. We miss her. And I know she'll watch this and she'll be like, take that dang thing down.
I think Justin's going to be the one. It's good.
I know. What I didn't realize, everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, please look at this picture because you're going to see my beloved husband doing dishes. Who doesn't love a man who does dishes?
Yeah.
So he is in the background of this picture, which I didn't even realize when I brought it in. But we do miss April today, but she will be back with us next week. But it gave us an opportunity to clear some space for you.
I have a lot of points to make.
Yeah.
As the dad.
I'm glad you listened to the show. I know when we first started, I gave you a hard time on a couple shows, and so you went on strike for a little bit.
I did. I was in protest going, wow, was I that bad?
So we've lightened it up. I didn't mean to insult you. So you were very kind to say yes for today.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I wanted you on today's show is we're finishing up. We've been in a series of the 7 strategies, year-end strategies, that can really help all of us build our wealth. And we're going to finish up with the last 2 today, but one is near and dear to your heart because you now have entered this world, which we'll get to in a second. So it's very, I love because I read about these, I work with clients to process them, but I don't have to live under the weight of them myself. And so we'll talk about what that is in a moment. So I thought the timing was perfect because there's a lot of listeners out there that this is a very overwhelming topic. In terms of retirement. What I don't, as a financial advisor, one of the things that irritates me is the complexity that some of the government policies bring to people's lives when they're entering a time where they don't want complicated, they want to simplify.
Exactly.
And so you can be our testimony of that today.
Yeah.
But before we get started, since you're here, did you have any sanity spends other than coming to see your daughter and grandkids
I did.
this week?
I'm sure, as all of you know, the car market is just crazy now. I mean, you drive to car lots and they're empty. There are no new cars. There are none on the boats. They're just not being made. And I had a car that was coming off lease. It had maybe 4 months to go. And the dealer who I bought the car from said, would you like to sell it? And I said, why? He said,
We need cars.
We need cars. We'll buy you out of the lease. And I said, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
So I negotiated.
And they didn't know who they were calling. You are like the professional negotiator.
I bought so many cars.
To the point where I'm embarrassed
That's
when
saying
I go
something,
with
right?
him. And so they put you into action.
They did, and
happened?
I took the car over, explained all the reasons they should give me a lot of money for turning it in, even though in case when you usually turn in a lease, you paid them to take the car back.
That's all I've ever done.
So I got out of 4 monthly payments. They gave me a nice check to buy me out of the lease, and I said goodbye to a car I never really liked that much anyhow, and used that. But then I was in the dilemma. Okay, there are no new cars.
Now you're having to be on the other side.
So now
of
I'm
that
dealing with the
equation.
supply chain on the other side. But fortunately, the internet is a wonderful tool.
Yep.
And the last car I actually bought from St. Louis, Missouri.
Nice.
So this one I found, and it was a car I liked. So I ended up making a deal over the internet. Went down to the dealership to pick it up, and the sales guy comes and says, the salesman, we cannot honor this deal because you're buying it for under invoice.
Sales
and I'm not
manager
sure
said,
if you
"Who
know.
approved this?"
There's no buying under invoice. In fact, most people are getting a $5,000 to $10,000 premium over stickers, they say. But I walked out of there with a off invoice price.
Of course you
and
did.
a car that I really wanted. So yeah, it was fun and I love it. And now I can drag race my wife and beat her in her car.
Nice. Well, that's always exciting. Not encouraged. No drag racing.
It's in my blood.
Yes. Yes. Dad has a long history with the law. Speeding
the Ohio State Patrol and I are not on good terms.
You're not in the state of Ohio today, so we can talk
Fortunately, not
about
there,
it.
and they don't know me in New Jersey yet, so it's a good thing.
Well, and it's always so exciting to get a new car.
It is.
For a
I
little
love
while.
cars. Oh my
But-
God, I love cars.
And because you get great deals on them, because you're not afraid to
Well, I
embarrass
think I know.
yourself.
I enjoy the search and the negotiating
enjoy
as
the
much as
hunt.
anything. So that was my sanity spend, and I actually
Yeah.
felt pretty good about
That's
it.
good. And you won. Anytime a manager comes out and says no, but has to you twist his arm with evidence, that makes it for a good day.
It does, yeah. I know their game.
I love it.
They should start a website.
I know you
Stan
should.
the Man helps you buy
well,
cars.
what's funny is what you're notorious for is your ability to if you have time, I give you and I know Annette, your wife, gives you projects
Yeah,
of
she
who to
does.
call in to argue a bill or argue for fees back. And your track record is quite impressive.
I'm pretty much undefeated, I must say. The government's the only one that just doesn't negotiate.
Well, and they're an unfair opponent because they can change the rules anytime they want.
They can.
So, and we've talked a lot about that on our show. As we've gone through, this is part 4 of our 7-year end strategies. And when we started a few shows ago, we were talking a lot about how the government, because we were talking a lot about traditional accounts versus Roth accounts and how paying some tax now when taxes are low, putting it into a Roth because it can grow tax free and become kind of like a golden nest egg that's secure from the government. As we see more and more people participating in Roths, I think the government's going to smell opportunity and possibly change the rules. But until they do, and it's not that the government's bad, but it is, it is a little bit of a race with them because they always make changes. They typically favor them, not us.
Yes.
And so we need to stay on our toes.
Yeah.
And so today, though, we're going to wrap up. We've talked about taxes. We've talked about IRAs and 401ks and Roth accounts and both of those, how to maximize them out. And if you have questions on any of those topics, just hit the rewind button a couple weeks and listen to all 4 parts of this. We've talked about converting and rebalancing your portfolio to mirror your appetite for risk. Do you say, Dad, have you been a riskier investor or a conservative investor?
I would say it differentiated on my where I was in life in terms of just what different activities were going on, where I was from an employment perspective. But certainly age has a lot to do with it. As you get to, there's more days behind you than ahead of you. You start to definitely go more on the conservative approach because the last thing you want to do is not be in a position to allow your family to benefit from your success.
Yeah.
And so I feel pretty good about what I've accomplished so far. and we'll see what the future holds. But yeah,
I did want to wear my favorite daughter shirt today, but I left it in Texas at our house there because I have 2 sisters. But I'm the favorite. So I was going to wear that shirt today to proclaim that so that they were reminded, being the oldest and the longest living, that I get to be the favorite. So,
yeah.
And I appreciate that. You know, I do have clients and they always make me laugh. Not a lot. A small percentage of my clients at Lighthouse definitely have no desire to leave any kind of legacy. I mean, their literal goal is to have their last check bounce. And so I appreciate that you are not one of those people, because I believe with you. I really believe in legacy and starting early, because again, as more and more as you can equip the next generation, and not just a legacy of wealth, but a legacy of faith, a legacy of generosity, those sorts of things, you're really shaping the next generation coming up. So you've always been so great at that.
One of my major goals was that my 3 daughters would graduate college with no debt. And fortunately, I was able to pursue it. Now I have one that's doing incredibly in the world of business.
Well, and I did help you with the no debt out of college, because
yeah, you did do it 3 years.
I did help the situation. I graduated in 3 years because I was so ready to be done.
That was my first new car after that.
And because, again, I think I learned my scrappiness from you, and I realized that the college I went to, you paid a lump sum whether you took 12 credits as a full-time student or 30. And so I maximized that and took 30 my fall semester and 31 my sophomore or my second semester of my 3rd year. So I cranked that sucker out. I had no life and I was not fun, but it was worth to get.
But you had an objective, and we know when Shannon has an objective, there's a way of getting there.
That's right. But to your point, to be debt free coming out of college, I think is so smart. And there's so many people, kids nowadays, who are just coming out with this crazy amount of debt, and they're getting good jobs, but not jobs that can pay off that debt outside of a decade or even 2.
It's a long-term debt.
So,
and there's usually the high interest rates usually apply. I mean, it's hard to get an unsecured loan at a decent interest rate, but I was able to do it, and not everybody's in that situation. So
I left many over because I wanted to get married.
Oh, then there's the wedding. Oh my
gosh! The last year of college tuition.
Fortunately, I never did see that bottom line number. Just
I think we
write me another check, Dad.
Just say yes, Dad. That's what Dads
I hope the other two elope.
So
I don't have to do that.
Oh, well, today's show, so how we're going to finish this up is we're going to talk about 2 topics. And oddly enough, a lot of people out there do not know that they actually relate to one another. And so the first one we're going to talk about, and those who are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you probably don't know what this word is, but you need to, because when you hit your 70s, it's something, the more advanced planning you can have around this topic, the more equipped you will be, because it's probably one of the 2 most complicated parts of retirement out there, and that is required minimum distributions, RMDs. Tell me your love and hate relationship with RMDs.
I'm not sure there's a love side to it. I feel I was a pretty well-educated business guy, and, I have my master's degree from Pitt, go Panthers. Mm-hmm. And when I retired and my planners started saying, well, now we have to focus on RMDs. And I said, I don't even know what that is. This is going to be as complicated as Medicare was. I'm not sure I want to get into it. So I started doing my own research to the point where I decided to take a financial course from Boston University because I really wanted to understand, because I'd never given the government more than I have to. Are they listening, by the way?
Probably.
So the concept of RMD surfaced when I became in my 70s, and it's always been somewhat of a moving target. But now I understand it, and this is the first year I actually have to participate. So now I'm looking at what's the best way to do it? Mm-hmm. How do I handle it? What are my options? How much do I have to take out?
That's right.
And how do I do it in such a way that doesn't affect my tax brackets or my Medicare brackets or my Social Security brackets, because it's all related.
It is. And let's remind the audience, because a lot of you don't even know what we're talking about. So RMDs, required minimum distributions, are mandatory withdrawals that you must take from your taxable accounts. So your IRAs, your 401ks, or any other tax deferred, and we've talked a lot about on this show what a tax deferred account is, after you turn 72. Now that 72 just changed through COVID. It used to be even more confusing when it was 70 and a half.
It did.
Which, for whatever reason, why would you ever pick a half? Like, really? But at least they switched it up. They extended it a little bit to 72. But whether you need the money or not, the government wants their tax money. And so they force a certain amount after when you're 72 and older, whether the market is up or down, the IRS forces you to take a portion of your savings, of your accounts, so they can get their taxes that they're owed.
Well, and it's a bigger portion than I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because your whole plan was to save for retirement, and now all of a sudden you're finding the government is taking a larger piece than you even expected.
Yeah.
Now it's less and less the closer you get to death, but as you get older, because it's dependent on the age factor.
Well, and in your beginning stages of retirement, you need more money because you're healthier to do more things.
Yeah.
So, we find with my clients that, the first, I'd say 10 to 15 years of retirement, they spend almost double what they do in the remaining years.
Yeah.
So, and this is when RMDs start to bite you
at the same time.
And it's if you don't take your RMDs, it's one of the steepest penalties the IRS issues if you don't take 50% of what you owed.
50%.
So if you owe, $30,000, not only do you still owe that $30,000 and the tax on that money, but now they're going to charge you an additional $15,000 just in the penalty. And so they are very serious about that topic. So we need to be very serious
Actually,
about
it can
that
get up
topic.
to 50.
Well, I know. Oh, yes.
Like,
but I'm saying if your RMD is $30,000 for a year, it
Yeah.
would be a $15,000 penalty if you don't do it. And so it's something to definitely do your homework on. So tell me a little bit about how do you know what your RMD is? So at the beginning of a new year, how do you get that number? Because you have multiple investments. You have stock investments, you have annuity investments. How do you get the whole number?
I'm very diversified, which I did on purpose because I didn't want to have 2008.
Right.
Which could probably or will happen again, hurt my retirement plan. So I believe in a lot of diversification.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I went to each of the, I use Allianz, for example, and I went to them and went to the different
Who's
people.
An annuity provider.
And they were really good about telling me for my this year, for 2021, what my RMD exposure is. And then I went to Fidelity. And then I wanted to actually get it from them.
So you called
Sometimes
each provider you had directly of the statements that you get in the mail.
Some providers will provide it to you in the statements. In the monthly statements, they'll tell you. But I found that I actually had to call them to get what the amount was because I wanted to, as early as possible, know what I had to do. Because for me, if I don't take that amount by December 31st of this year, I have until April, I think it's 1st or 15th of next year.
At your filing date.
However, that means I have to take two distributions in 2022, which blows you out of any bracket.
Yeah.
So I really want to do it by the end of the year. So that's what I did to find out what all the amounts were. And then I'd say, okay, now of those amounts, how much do I need to live on, right? So that I was going to take out anyhow from my retirement accounts.
That's right.
And then the balance is what you have to figure out how to do the best you can in protecting yourself.
Yeah. And so I have, a lot of clients that I manage at Lighthouse that if they don't need the money, we take the RMD, we pay the taxes, they send in their taxes, and then we reinvest the rest.
Yeah.
And so that's a strategy that anyone can do. Or a lot of our clients who need, that monthly income and they'll take it as income because they have to pay income tax on it.
Right.
So that's what they use. And at least, I'm thankful that the government, at least, it could be worse, where they'll give you the amount. So like you said, you called every single provider on every single statement that you received that has that you have an annuity with, that you have an investment with, what have you, that were tax deferred investments. And you got that amount. So let's say it was $30,000, like in our illustration. And at least what the government does. So yes, you have to take $30,000 out, but not from any one account. You can take the $30,000 from a little from each account.
Yes.
If you have already annuitized an annuity and you already pull $30,000 out a year, that will suffice for the RMD. So they do allow a little bit of creativity of where you take that money, but it's not if you take it, it's how you take it. Right. And so that's something that is just very important out there to be mindful of. We were talking on the way to the show this morning. What were the top 3? RMDs was number 1. What were the other 2 things that were the hardest things for you to kind of get a hold of when you went from working to becoming your own paycheck in retirement?
Yeah. I think I didn't realize how much I had to pay the government for Medicare. I know it's income dependent, but somewhere in my mind I thought, I paid into Medicare my entire working life and Social Security. And then to find out after retired that I still have to pay Medicare. So that was one of the biggest surprises. And then it varies every year depending on your reported income.
How did you learn about Medicare? I think this is practical because our listeners out there are all overwhelmed by it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, first off, you get the statements from the government saying, welcome to Medicare. Here's how much you're going to have to pay this year. So I bought Medicare for Dummies.
Hey.
I could not find anybody out there that give me a straight answer. Trying to get a hold of somebody in the government and being put on hold for 2 days was not working for me.
Yeah.
So, and most of the financial advisors are not, they know, but they don't.
But they don't know the ins and outs because they don't have to live on it yet. So they know the 10,000 foot view, but they rarely know all of the ins and outs.
Yeah. So that was a huge surprise to me in terms of managing that whole area in terms of plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D.
All the supplementals that are required.
Yeah. Then the other part was there are a lot of doctors that do not take Medicare. So then you have to determine which ones you're going to use, which ones are in network, out network, what are the co-pays, are you going to do so there's a lot. But fortunately, the book did a good job of explaining all of those.
Okay.
And so I feel now that I had to spend a lot more time doing it than I thought I was going to have to do it. So now every year the government and I have this nice conversation about what my payments are going to be.
It's one-sided because they really don't participate. They just give you the rules and then you have to read the 300-page booklet of any changes
I did find one year they were using the wrong year for my income. They decided to use a high year that was like 3 years ago. And versus my current.
They ruined the day because they didn't know Stan the Man and his negotiating powers.
So you can set an actual appointment with somebody, either you can go and wait for 2 days or you can actually set it up well into the future. But you go in. And I did find once I was in the office talking to one of them, they were extremely helpful.
Because they know all the ins and outs.
They know all the ins and outs. And they really were quite helpful.
Yeah.
They did they agreed with what I suggested and said, yes, we'll use your most current year. Because they didn't know I had quit working, right? So that was unknown to them. And that was going to be my last year of a larger income anyhow.
Gotcha. So, and it's an important thing to be aware of because when you take required minimum distributions, when you take income, when you become your own paycheck, you also have to, even if you do any kind of account conversions from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, which we've encouraged a lot of our listeners to do because of the tax rates being so low and the lowest in 40 years, you still have to be mindful in working with your CPA to understand, okay, if I increase my income this year to take advantage of the tax rate, what other levers are going to be impacted? What's it going to do to my Medicare premiums?
Exactly.
What is it going to do, for other government programs that I'm dependent upon? And so it's more of like a chess game.
It is.
Not a game of checkers, but chess, because each piece affects another.
Yes.
And so I always encourage our younger audience out there to start as many Roth accounts as you can. Max them out as much as you can. If you have a company that has a Roth 401k, maximize that out at $19,500 a year, or put the $6,000 a year in your Roth IRA, because that right now is the only way to not have a joint retirement account with the government.
I agree. I think if you're over 50, I think it goes to 7,000.
59 and a half.
59 and a half.
It has to be a half because the government halves for some
numbers.
reason. But yes, you can do kind of some catch-up contributions.
Yeah. No, it's been a learning experience, but I love retirement. I spend a lot of time hopefully get out here more, spending time with my two other daughters, Lizzie, my nurse Lizzie, and Olivia, doing so well at American Express. So. Yeah, I'm blessed in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I love retirement. I get to play the golf I wanted to,
Well,
going
and
places,
you also
doing
did it the right
things.
way. You don't have any
Yeah.
anxiety in retirement because you
None.
took the right approach. You wanted to solve for income, and that's where
Yeah.
we really want to encourage people to think about is you want to solve your income goals first. Because if
Yeah.
income's taken care of, you don't have to worry what the stock market
Right.
does necessarily. You don't have to worry about running out of money, which a lot of our listeners, I think, still struggle with. And so, I liked your approach of being conservative, participating in the right products that gave you the guaranteed longevity so that you can golf, you can go see grandkids, you can take trips
Yeah.
with your wife and have a good
my
time.
lovely
So-
wife Annette to help me with long-term care. So
That's right. Well, and what I love most about that is in the RMD equation, if you marry someone younger than you, you get a tax
You
break
can
on
do
your, or
that.
you get a break on your RMD. So
can
hey,
do-
another reason
you can have it
to.
delayed if you want. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Well, the last thing I wanted to follow up, and this ties into RMDs, and I'm using this now because it will tie into our next show after Thanksgiving, and this is, I think a lot of people didn't know this. When you met with me and my advisor at Lighthouse, you weren't aware of this either. So it's always good to teach your dad something. just
It
to
is.
say.
I'm very teachable.
But if you don't need your RMD as income, you do have an option to make a qualified charitable distribution,
Yeah.
QCD. And what you can do is instead of taking the RMD personally, you can give it towards a qualified charity, which are usually 501c3
Yes.
registered with the IRS. And you can actually donate up to $100,000 from your IRA without owing taxes on that money.
Exactly.
So as we move into giving and charitable contributions, we talk a lot about generosity on this show and just how much it really helps. It helps your heart. It helps put good seeds in the ground that return to you, and it blesses the greater good. And so allowing your retirement accounts, if you don't need all of that for income, knowing what's at your disposal so that RMDs can be yet another lever you can use for giving.
Right.
I think, and the only qualifier is you have to have whatever account you're taking out to make this QCD. They have to send the check directly to the charity
organization,
in the
yeah.
charity's
Yeah.
name. It can't be you can't be the pass through, or it doesn't work.
Right.
And so if you want qualified charitable distributions to be a way that you leverage taking your RMD, it's just to go, especially if you're giving anyways,
Exactly,
and
yeah.
you've always been a
Yeah.
faithful giver. What do you feel like giving has done for you, both for heart, your wealth, allowing money not to have a hold on you? What has giving done for you, do you think, in your life?
Oh, I think it's happiness and joy. I mean, the joy and happiness you get out of giving in the, depending on where you give, we give to the church and charitable organizations, and you see that money at work. And, it's also, lowers your gross income
That's
or
right.
the reportable income.
It's a strategy of the
It's a
7-year
strategy to keep you all those other brackets. So for me, I just, I love to give. You get so much more out of giving than getting.
You do.
And to see what you can do out there to make a difference. And
Yeah.
there's so much need in the world right
There
now.
is. There
So
is.
much.
I love that. And again, when we are closing out with giving, like you said, yes, they're the heart things. They're the making sure that you are a river, not a reservoir, right?
Yeah,
so a
so
river
true.
of giving.
Good analogy. yeah.
And then, from a tax perspective, it does help
It
in
does.
terms of lowering your tax bracket. You pay, all of those deductions are tax deductible up to a
Right.
certain amount. And it's usually up to 60% of your adjusted gross income. So you can get quite aggressive in your giving,
You can.
which I have found as a business owner, because as a business owner, business taxes are a little bit more complicated. What you do with your money, how you move it, where you move it, what you're going to need it for, what you're not. But and sometimes I drive myself crazy with that. But I made a decision when I started buying companies to tithe my business, because I tithe my personal income, but also to tithe the business, just because it helps me not to think that I'm in control.
Yes.
And it helps me allow myself to
so
kind of
true.
surrender what's going on, or it just wreaks havoc on me because I feel just too responsible and it's too stressful and I feel like I'm all on my own in it. But if I start giving and if I start just making sure that this is not necessarily just mine, and let the Lord lead it, I really have found that psychologically it's helped me be a more effective leader and a more effective business owner because I have less stress about it. So we'll talk, like I said, we are going to spend December talking about giving, talking about giving strategies. We'll mention this, but there's also some charitable contribution credits. There's charitable stacking. There's different things out there that I want to make sure our listeners know, because giving to me has been the single most, and I say this a lot, giving has been the single most thing that has grown my wealth. That's not why I did it. That's not a motivator for me, but nonetheless, what you reap, what you sow, you reap. And so it is one of those things, and it allows wealth not to own me. Because that's, I see people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. If money becomes their God, it owns them, whether they have a little or if they have much. Yeah. And I don't want to live that way. It's too stressful. We've all been there in seasons, and it's so stressful. So giving is a way of surrender, of allowing you to lay it down so it doesn't have to master you. So we're going to spend more time in December with that. But before we go, how do you like to listen to the show? How do you listen to Copy Talk?
Well, YouTube is usually delayed a few days after. So what I do is I listen to the podcast like the next day or whatever, usually while I'm working out. And then if there's really something, like I really wanted to see what April was wearing last week that you said she was, Alabama threw up all over, because I love April to death. And it was so funny. Yes. So I do like watching that. But yeah.
Good.
I know we're a mess, but I also wanted to take the opportunity to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We will be here after the holiday with a brand new show. We wish April the best. Happy Thanksgiving. Yes. Excited to get you back in the studio. But join us, our community, on Instagram, on YouTube, copytalkpodcast.com if you want to ask a question or ask for any kind of help financially or what have you. And we will return. So thank you for joining us today. It was so fun to have you. Every time you come into town, I think we'll have you as a guest to give us your fatherly wisdom. So thank you, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Lighthouse Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor. Shannon Ross is CEO and managing partner of Lighthouse Financial. Lighthouse and Cambridge are not affiliated.